I'm Dr. Jody Brown, and like you said, I do wear a couple of different hats that I'm honestly learning how to balance at this time in my life. But data analyst, sociologist, holistic health worker, like I've had a long-standing interest in like well-being and just how people are doing. Like that's been a thing since I was young. I was a caretaker. We won't go into all of that, but so care has been a part of my life for quite a long time. Uh, how I sort of ended up in these practices, I have a certification aside from my PhD in sociology. I have a certification in yoga and Reiki. I've done some life coaching and some sound healing as well. And so I use those practice together um, through my business Love Seeds, where I do like intuitive coaching, where I've even brought in some tarot and some astrology inside of that. So that's the holistic piece, but I'm also a researcher by nature, like and by training, and so I like to think about how what the research says about holistic health practices and how we can sort of combine these things in ways that are healthy, in ways that are scientifically backed. But I also like to flow with, mindfulness and energy and spirit. Like those things are important to me. So at this point in my life, I'm learning how to combine all those things, balance those things to live authentically. And for me, it's just really put more love into the world. Um, how I got into the holistic health space was actually through my graduate school training. Like earning an advanced degree can be really intensive, and it can take a toll on you mentally, physically. It can take a toll on you spiritually, and so at some point you have to take some time to think about how are you supporting yourself, like how are you showing up in these spaces, how do you want to go about doing this very intensive and a lot of times lonely work that you end up doing. And so this led me into more holistic health practices. Like I got into meditation while I was in graduate school. I remember it was just like a simple class that I saw through an email from the health center, and I was one of the first people to sign up and got a spot, and that sort of kicked off a long, continuing, because I would say it's continuing journey of mindfulness, meditation, and holistic health. Um, and over time, like I said, the yoga came in, which is not just physical; it's a whole body spirit system. I practice it in that way. The Reiki, which is more about energy healing as well, and the sound healing similarly. And so I also like incorporate some breath work because breathing is one of our um, basic tools for mindfulness that we all have and we all can use. So it's a great thing to keep in mind. So that's just a bit about how I've gotten here over time. Yeah, no problem. So, just our little roadmap for today is we'll start with a grounding practice. Like, I brought one of my favorite singing bowls, it's a heart chakra singing bowl. Um, and so that's going to help center us. I'll play for like a minute or two where people can just really tune into the sound, just breathe and listen, and we'll take a deep breath or two, and then we'll move into my reflection. And in the reflection, I'm actually going to invert the themes like you introduced them: balance and harmony, gratitude and harvest, and then introspection and letting go. But I'm going to start with the gratitude and harvest, move into the introspection and letting go, and then we'll think about. I'll spend some time talking about how that all ties into balance and harmony. And I'll end with just a short, practical way of working on our balance and harmony every day, just with a simple check in. Because a lot of times we can all get so busy that we don't even stop to check and see how we're doing. So I really just want to leave people with something that is practical, that's useful, that they can draw upon at any point in the day.
All right. Well, that sounds good to me.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. Travis, do you want to lay some foundation now around healing and well-being, just kind of getting the definition. And I'm saying that because I know for us, we always describe IAM as a healing centered and well-being organization, right? But then the more that we've been thinking about these conversations, it's just kind of like, okay, we have a definition that we're using in terms of IAM, but other people might think about it in different ways. So just to kind of have like a foundation and start there, let's share our definition
Yes.
first. So you go first, and then after that, we're gonna ask, just ask you, Joey, what's your definition of those terms, that healing and well-being. So I'll let Travis share.
So, Joy and everyone, the Institute of African American Mindfulness, the way that we define healing is as a return to balance. So, that balance is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual balance. And once you return to balance, then we talk about well being because well being is maintaining that balance. And the beautiful thing about the healing process and the practice of healing, because healing is ongoing, it ebb and flows, throughout your whole life, you're always healing,
Mhm.
you know. And some things are very pronounced because maybe something has happened that you need some time to heal from, something physical, for example, breaking your leg, that's a return to balance in that leg. So at the Institute of African American Mindfulness, that's what we're in the business of, really supporting those two things, supporting healing and maintaining that healing. And we're doing all of that inside of community.
Mhm. And I think that just to add on to that, the word balance, I know for me, when I think about it, even in the terms of healing, this return to balance, I don't think of it as like everything is exactly balanced like this. I think sometimes that kind of
Mhm.
gets people a little maybe confused or feel like, oh, well, that's not, balance is not a real thing because nothing can be exactly like, balance in this way. So I know for me, that's not what we mean in terms of balance, that everything
Mhm.
is exactly equal across the board, because to me, that's not realistic in life.
Mhm.
The balance is, in my mind, the balance is the balance of everything that ebbs and flows. So you're
Mhm.
balancing that, not that everything has to be at 10, 10, 10, 10 across the board. So I just wanted to clarify that, just in case some people are like, oh yeah, here we go about balance again. And that's not, that's not
Mhm.
this, it's not real or whatever. So Joey, how about you? When you hear those words healing, when you hear well-being, how do you define it?
Mm. So, just to be honest, I am pretty in alignment with what you all have said. I don't really have much to add. When I think about healing and well being, I also take time to remind myself that we are also whole. So, this is very interesting, sort of recursive dynamic of we are whole and we have the things that we need inside of us, or nearby, even as we may have healing to do, whether that be physically, emotionally, or spiritually in some instances. And Camilla, I think definitely thinking about balance, and the way I plan to talk about it today is, it's not some one point and we get there and we're like all good forever, because you're right, that's not maintain that's not it's not easy to maintain that. It's an imperfect situation. Like, it's impossible to set people up for that type of expectation. And so then people just get frustrated and they give up. And I'm more of a, are we doing the best we can where
Mhm.
we are, and I'll talk more about this, but I tend to think of balance as a range, not necessarily a point. Like, um, I can be good. I can be good across a range of things. Like, I'll give an example once I start talking, but even something like body temperature, it's not a set point that everybody's body temperature is. Like, there's a range of what's healthy and what's outside the bounds of that. And part of life is being mindful and being aware of how we're doing, and then gently returning to balance, not forcefully snapping ourselves back into place like a rubber band, but being kind and gentle with ourselves. I mean, especially in the community, because a lot of times we can be rigid because we've been put in social boxes, or we feel like we have to perform certain ways in order to thrive in society. And for me, done a lot about thinking I've done a lot of thinking about what authentic empowerment looks like within community. Because when people can show up as themselves, they can show up better for their community, because they're better able to give up their natural gifts and talents and to develop those. And when they're at their best, they're giving to the community, they're giving the best to their community. So I like that partnership between allowing people the space to be their authentic selves, to be authentically empowered, and then pouring that into the community. So another reason I'm excited for us to be having this community conversation.
Yes.
Well, I know we over here like bobbleheads as you're
Yeah.
talking. Yeah,
Yeah.
because and I want to get to this grounding, but I just have to say, because this piece about authentic empowerment, I love the way you even like, frame that. Yeah, that's one, that's a nugget there. So everybody out there, hold on to that. But let's get into our grounding so we can get into this conversation, because I'm like reared up now. I'm excited. All right, so take it away. We're gonna give it back over to you, Dr. Joey Brown.
Okay, thank you so much. So everyone, we're going to start with some sound. Um, like sound vibrations are good; they're helpful for us, and they can help us come back to balance. And so I have a singing bowl with me. I guess I'll show it really quickly. This is a crystal singing bowl. It's a 432 hertz crystal singing bowl, and so it is attuned to our heart chakra and our heart energy. I chose it because we're focusing on balance and harmony today. And so we know that we're used to thinking about intelligence in our head. And some people may have heard about gut intelligence, like trusting our gut, but we also have intelligence in our heart. And so in the spirit of balance and harmony, it came to me to bring the heart singing bowl, because that's our center. Between our head and our gut is our heart. So you can just close your eyes if you like. You can bring them to a soft gaze, or you can stay eyes wide open. It's all on you. And I'm going to play for roughly a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And I want you to just breathe deeply, tune in to the sound. And if it appeals to you, notice where you feel it in your body, or put your attention on your heart space. All right. gently, bring yourself back into your body, into your space, into the room. And then let's just all take a deep breath. So inhale to 1, 2, 3. Hold 1, 2, 3. Exhale 1, 2, 3. Hold the breath out 1, 2, 3. All right. And then just gently return to your normal inhale and exhale. And when you feel prepared to do so, just open your eyes. All right. Um, so I'd like to move into the reflection, but Camilla or Travis, if you want to share your experience with the bowl and just any comments you'd like to make before I start about that experience for you all.
Yeah, it felt very soothing. I appreciate that. I feel a little bit more grounded. And I'm excited to hear about what you're about to offer. Yeah.
I feel the same way. I was trying to think of the word, and soothing fits it perfectly. I felt the same way. So
Good.
thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you all. So I prepared a bit of a reflection about the fall themes that Camilla and Travis mentioned earlier. So we'll talk a bit about gratitude and harvest, introspection and letting go, and then I'll spend some time talking about balance and harmony, which for me is kind of focal. Give me just a second. Let me have a drink of my tea. Okay, so let's talk a bit about gratitude and harvest. Harvesting what we've collected, preparing to sow those seeds, and also introspection and letting go. So, in the spirit of gratitude, I'm very thankful to be here. I'm going to fully acknowledge this is really outside of my comfort zone and I'm trying something new, putting myself out here like this. And so it's an honor to be doing so with IAAM and to be talking about these fall themes. And so I really wanted to do something that was, of course, intelligent, but also from the heart. So these topics really resonate with me at this time in my life. Maybe because I'm a fall baby, I don't know, but um, that's where we are. So, in flowing with the rhythm of nature, fall is a time of slowing down, actually. Our nights are getting longer, our days are getting shorter, our temperatures are getting colder, and some of the life that sprung up during the spring and blossomed during the summer is beginning to sort of let go. We're looking around and leaves are falling from the tree. And so we tend to be able to feel this. The energy is slowing down. And it's pushing us to begin to relax and in some ways also prepare. If we look around, even at the animals, they're starting to prepare for winter. Birds are getting ready to fly south. Um, the squirrels, if you see them, they're starting to dig around for their nuts. They can get territorial now, so don't get too close. But if you watch them, they're out doing their thing. In the human world, we can think about fall harvest, right? We can think about fall harvest is still ongoing, but it's starting to close out. So as the fall harvest winds down, farmers are harvesting stuff like apples, gourds, pumpkins, grains. We've all been to some fall festivals here and there, played in the corn mazes. So fall in many ways is like our last hurrah before we settle in for the winter, for the long winter. So in the same way that we are preparing for winter in this way, I think the fall provides us an opportunity to take inventory of what we are harvesting in our own lives. And so it's a nice time for us to take stock. Um, After all of the activity, the vigorous activity of spring and summer, how is our body doing? How is our mind? Like, what is our mental state? What kind of thoughts and emotions are we experiencing? You know, some people enjoy fall, but for some people, it can be more of a sad time. What behaviors have we been engaging in over the past few months? And how is our mind, body, spirit connection at this time? Are we feeling balanced and harmonious? So, along with that harvest, we stop to ask, what are we grateful for about these current experiences? With gratitude and harvest in mind, I kind of want to shift into the theme of introspection and letting go. So, fall is also very nicely situated for thinking about introspection. Like, we all typically go to harvest because it's what we see. You know, again, bringing up like fall festivals. I was at one last year and we did the hayride and people were painting pumpkins. But I think introspection is good to do anytime, but it's also naturally connected to the fall because after the harvest, there's a sorting that must occur. Like, you know, we all talk about the harvest, but once the harvest occurs, there's a sorting. And so, with that sorting, we're thinking about uh, what do we want to keep? What do we want to let go of? You know? Um, and then we want to prepare those things for winter. In one form of yoga, the sage Patanjali writes about viveka or discernment. And so this is a process of recognizing when we're lost in identifying with our fluctuations of consciousness. And so, like in yoga, when people talk about fluctuations of consciousness, they're just talking about like how we know things. So, like through our direct perception, um, our imagination, that can be a fluctuation, like our daydreaming, memory, things we remember, and even misconceptions, like things that we think are real but are not. So, for instance, if we look at a water hose and we mistake it for a snake, and then there's sleep. And so, in this form of yoga, as humans, we can sometimes get lost in identifying with these different aspects of consciousness of life. And so, again, tying this back to fall and introspection, we can really stop and take some time and think about our lessons. Like, what am I holding on to that may not be so real? Like, what are my illusions that I'm carrying and buying into? And so, this mental emotional sorting process, it can be a time that helps remind me that I'm bigger than any thought or emotion that I may be having at any given moment, you know? So it's during the harvest, we've stopped to be aware or to be mindful of our current situation. And during the sorting and the introspection, we take the time to ponder how our current situation may be related to the seeds that we've previously planted. Um, because we had to get here some way. Like we got here from somewhere. So what are those initial seeds that we planted? Um, how are those seeds related to things that we've been seeing play out over the course of our year? You know, I think this is best done from a non-judgmental standpoint, because when we start to judge ourselves, we can be tempted to only acknowledge some consequences or and let go of others. So we don't always give ourselves the the grace to see a full picture of what are the outcomes of our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, and our actions. Like, what are we creating with our life energy? You know, those are three things that we all have: thoughts, emotions, actions. And granted, as a sociologist, I'm trying to think about how those things are constrained by our social structures, like the families that we live in, the nations that we inhabit, those things. But I'm also a bit of a social psychologist, and I can't give up all people's power to those social structures. Like, as individuals, we all have things in our heart that we want to do, and we can push back against our family. Like, if we don't agree with things, we don't have to follow old traditions. We do have choices in life, and we have to maximize those in order to live a fulfilling life. So, that introspective sorting process is very important in fall. And it can ultimately lead us to profound insights. And that can help with decision making around what we want to keep and what we want to let go. And so, as we examine what I like to think of as the fruits of our creative activities, um, we can consider what lessons we've learned. So, some ways we can think about this is one, are there things that have served us well that we want to keep? Like, what's working for us? Um, Especially things that may serve us during the winter time when it's cold and dark and we begin to enter this period of rest. So, what has been working for us? A lot of times we can get so caught up on what we need to fix that we don't stop to acknowledge that, hey, I've been doing some things right. Even if we've been in survival mode and unconscious, I've been doing the best I can at any given moment. And it is wise to acknowledge, what good has come of that. So, what has been working for me? Next, we might go further and ask, are there some things that we need to process further and sit with before we plant in the spring? So, these may be ideas, behaviors, beliefs, emotions that we know we want to work on in the future, but we're not quite ready to deal with them right now. So instead, these might be things that we're aware that we want to let go or we want to modify in some way, but we need time to sit with that. So these are the things that we can let gestate as we enter winter, because winter is a time of rest. So we can let things gestate and just sit with what we've learned. Sometimes we need to sit with a lesson before we can fully comprehend the magnitude of that experience, or we need to sit with an experience before we can comprehend the magnitude of what it has to teach us, the lessons involved in those experiences. And then, honestly, there are just some things that we need to let go of. Like, we've all been there. Things that we know no longer serve us. It's time. We know it. We're ready, and just like the fall harvest, these are the things that you're not giving to people. You may put them in the compost. You may put them in the compost somewhere. You may even end up trashing them. But, you start that journey towards release, because that's really what that is. Like, I know I choose to let that go. So those are some ways we can think about, gratitude and introspection and letting go, and how we can tie that back to the fall season. Like, thinking about the fall harvest, thinking about the sorting process, and sort of what we are keeping, what are we letting go, and how do we package that in a way um, that can nourish us. So now that we've been through those things, I'd really like to draw our attention to the theme of balance and harmony. So, when we talk about balance and harmony, we've been talking about finding equilibrium across mind, body, and spirit. And I want to point out a few things about balance and harmony in our natural environment. And I think that it can help us in thinking about balance and harmony across mind, body, and spirit. So, four things. One, balance is a natural part of life. Like, and I'll explain more about that, but just sit with that. Balance is a natural part of life. Balance involves multiple systems. Balance involves multiple systems. Um, Balance occurs along a range and in rhythm. Like, balance occurs along a range and in rhythm. And then we've already talked a bit about this, but nothing stays exactly balanced forever. So we need to stop trying to hold on to that idea that we'll get to this one perfect state and we'll be we'll be like good. We'll just be living in bliss forever. Maybe that's in some dimension. It's not in this one. Um, so let's look at where balance shows up in nature, and that'll be exemplify some of these points that I've been talking about. So, balance being a natural part of life. Like, we can see balance and harmony really all around us. If we think about Earth, if we think about the flow of the seasons, We think about Earth's climate. We can think about even within our biological bodies, like homeostasis,
Mhm.
like is a natural process. Like we need to be in homeostasis to be optimally functional.
Mhm.
Music, for my music people out there, which is a combination of pitches and notes, art through color and aesthetic. And like I said, even through nature, through the changing seasons and the rhythm of time, like these are some ways in which balance naturally shows up in life. Now, when I say balance involves multiple systems, none of us are an island. And so if we think about our body, to stay in homeostasis, we have a variety of systems that must stay regulated. And they're not regulated to one point, like your temperature is not 98.6 all of the time, but there's a range in which your temperature can be. I moved into the next point, but what I'm saying is here there are multiple systems, like our organ system, our endocrine system, our nervous system. All of these things work together to help keep us in homeostasis. Our mental health. Our mental health is related to there's a biological component,
Mhm.
but there's also our social environment that's important to our mental health. So again, multiple systems, multiple systems. There's an inside outside relationship with that. Um, and I mean, just really quickly, like music harmony involves a lot of things. Consonance and dissonance, for one, chord progression, scales and keys, like multiple systems come together to create balance and harmony across a variety of things. Um, and in terms of a range, I'm not going to stay here long because I've given this example multiple times. Like, there's not one specific point of balance, there's usually a range. For example, if our body temperature is anywhere from 96 to 99, most people are like, okay, I'm good. Now, once it gets below 96, once it gets above 99, then we start to be like, okay, I need to be concerned here because we're out of the range of balance here. And so, likewise, in thinking about balance between mind, body, and spirit, there may be a range in which we feel balance. And last, again, but not least, again, nothing stays balanced forever. A musical note has to end. Artistic trends, they come and go. Um, our body's vital signs are continually fluctuating. Ask anybody who goes to get a physical each year, and you will see that the numbers vary from here to there. Um, I'm at the age where we talk about cholesterol, but we're gonna leave that alone. There's a range. You want to keep it. You want to keep it in that range. Um, And I mean, we don't think about it this way, but something as simple as our weight. Like we weigh less in the morning than we do in the evening. Our body temperature, we're coldest in the early morning hours, and our body temperature reaches peak temperature at around in the afternoon. So, and last but not least, like since we're talking about fall, the earth only has two equinoxes a year. Like there's the spring and the fall equinox. And these are the two times in a year where Earth's axis is like not pointed directly at the sun or not pointed, too far away from it. Um, so even the Earth has like these 2 points where things are as close to perfectly balanced as we might think of balance in our normal traditional ways of thinking. So through this lens of mindfulness, we talk holistically about balance and harmony, meaning that we're interested in equilibrium between our mind, our body, and our spirit, you know. So, another way that I hear people talk about this, and I've talked about it myself, is do we feel in alignment? Do we feel in alignment? So, what are some practical ways that we know we're in alignment? Because, I know Travis mentioned earlier about healing and well being, maintaining that, but also not making it, you and Camilla mentioned, not making it something that's unattainable or something that's inaccessible, but something that's really approachable for people in their everyday lives. What are some practical ways we may know we're in alignment when we're in balance? One way is we feel ease in our body. And, I want to say that with the caveat of everybody's bodies have different things going on. So, what ease feels like in my body may feel different from what ease feels like in someone else's body. And I know, in the community, we have a variety of people who deal with chronic health conditions like hypertension, like diabetes. So I say that to say that, given where your health status is, we have to still think about what ease feels like in my body for me. Okay. Now, when we think about the mental piece of that, I want to think about equanimity in our mind. And equanimity is just a big word for calmness and evenness in our thought and emotion. So, am I calm? Am I even across my thinking and my emotions? And again, another word for that is equanimity. And third, when we think about spirit, I think about our sense of connection to our spirit. So, do we feel like we're connected to something bigger than ourselves? Do we feel like we have purpose in our lives? Are we content? Do we have a sense of peace or joyfulness? And I want to stress that peace and joyfulness and contentment are more enduring states, not like the emotion of happiness. I'm not telling people just go be happy. Like, this is a deeper um, a deeper ease, that peace and joyfulness represents here. All right. So I think that we need to bring more grace in when we think about what it means to be in balance and harmony, rather than putting this pressure on ourselves to always be in balance and harmony. We have to stop approaching it as an ideal and, think about balance and harmony in reality, like through our lived experiences. And if we're honest about it, it's much messier than we tend to acknowledge it.
Mhm.
And so, for me, I'll just share two important themes that have been integral in my life recently that have been helping me develop a healthier understanding and a healthier relationship to balance and harmony have been setting realistic expectations and acceptance, just to be honest. So, when I talk about setting realistic expectations, I mean, instead of forming some grand idea about balance, I began to just try to pay more attention to when I might be balanced or imbalanced across my day, if I can catch it, because sometimes we're living life and days go by in a blur. But as often as I can remember, I try to, um, see if I'm balanced. Like, am I breathing at the moment? Um, so moments of balance across my day instead of trying to worry about some state. Um, so And then my second thing for me that's been important is acceptance. Um, I have had a tendency to be a bit of a perfectionist. And when you have that trait, it can drive you to want to do things well. So there is a seed of goodness in it, but you have to be careful about it because it can also lead to you not getting anything done because everything has to be an ideal way. When I was working on my big project to get my PhD, I had to embrace the philosophy that a done dissertation was better than no dissertation at all. Like, you can always do better, but you have to do something. You can't live in your head forever. And so, even with thinking about finding balance, I had to accept imbalance as a normal part of life. Like, it just is. Imbalance is a normal part of life, but we can gently put ourselves back on a path toward balance. And we can learn to appreciate and recognize and appreciate when we're in our zone of balance. Sometimes we don't do that. Like, we may be experiencing balance, but we've been so trained to only pay attention to when we're imbalanced that we don't notice it, you know. So part of that acceptance has been accepting that I actually do find balance a lot more than I give myself credit for. And so starting to be more fully present in my life, in my body, in my emotions, in my mind, and with my spirit, so that I can notice when I'm in my zone of balance, when I am feeling at peace, maybe when I am operating from a place of flow. Um, and then when I am experiencing imbalance in whichever area that may occur, gently accepting that, like having the grace to say, hey, you know what, my emotions are all over the place right now. Like I don't have it. This may not be the time for me to be trying to make plans or do this, because my thoughts have been all over the place. Like I don't feel connected to something bigger. I've been feeling a bit selfish lately. Like um so accepting when I'm in an imbalanced state and gently figuring out how to get myself back to a more balanced range, a more balanced range. So now that we've talked a bit about balance and harmony, I just want to talk about some quick daily practices that maybe can help us find balance and harmony, equilibrium across mind, body, and spirit. And the first thing I want to say is breathing is key. Like breath is key. Our breathing can really clue us into how we're doing. Are we engaging in short, shallow breaths? Because that might tell us we're a bit anxious, um, or a bit stressed. Do we find that we're holding our breath? A lot of times, a lesson for me has been, I've been holding my breath this whole time and I didn't even know it. You know, and so when is the last time we just took a deep breath? And for me, check-ins are important. I think check-ins with ourselves, check-ins with other people, like they're generally just important. I think we sometimes underestimate the value of our check-ins, and I believe in, returning to our theme of authenticity, having honest check-ins with ourselves. So before we can find any balance, we need to know what state of being we are in at a given moment. You know, and so oftentimes, if we've been living from a place of feeling like we're too busy to ask how we're doing, so we're so busy that we don't feel like we have time to ask how we're doing, and that's been going on for a long time, an extended period of time, then that is a clue that we're operating out of balance. Um, if there's an urge to skip a check-in, or your first thought is, I don't know, like, that's also a safe bet that you're probably operating from a place of imbalance. And we can break that down further, because once we know that we're operating from a place of imbalance, then we do well to stop and ask ourselves where that imbalance is occurring. Like, so how is my body? How is my mind? How is my spirit? And so, again, do I feel connected to anything bigger than myself? Do I feel like I've been living in integrity? Have I been at peace and experiencing joy? So, lastly, what I'll say, and this is a few parts, but once we've taken some breaths and done a check in, we can take things one step further and ask, do I need anything? And if so, what do I need? So now there are moments where we'll do these check-ins, and the answer will be, nah, I'm good. You know, but I don't want that fake, that fake, I'm good, I'm good, just because that's the standard answer. But a genuine, my body is comfortable, my mind is at ease, and I feel like I have purpose in my life. Like that is a yes, I'm good. Like how am I doing? I'm good. Congratulations if that's where you are. You know what I'm saying. But if not, what do I need that I could provide right now? Like, what do I need that I can provide right now? So, for example, if we're talking body wise, maybe if I realized I've been very sedentary, Can I engage in some movement? Whether that be gentle stretching or even going outside and taking a walk, if we're able to. Um, because we know science has told us that taking a walk, engaging in physical activity is good for us, it's good for our bodies. If on the other end, because some people just go go go, that may be their default or how they tend to roll. If our body is tired, do we need rest? Like, rest is also an essential part of our well-being. Have we been getting the sleep that we need to be at our best? And a lot of times that'll be one of the first things we sacrifice. I gotta go, I gotta grind, I gotta, make it happen. But no, sometimes you need to sleep. Sometimes you need to sleep and you need to find that balance so that you can then do what you need to do in a more healthy way. And if it's on a more serious note, though, we also need to ask, do I have serious dis-ease in my body that I need to address? Because even if we can't do anything about that in the moment, we can think about getting to some medical care, getting the professional help that we need to address dis-ease, especially chronic dis-ease that we're aware of. And then, how's my mental health? And so, in our community, I'm glad that we're having more talks about mental health because it's very important. It's a thing that we've taken for granted and sacrificed um, by pushing through. So, how is my thinking? And how am I feeling? Like, how am I feeling emotionally? Am I trapped in recurring negative thinking? Have I been dealing with life in healthy ways? Because we'll find a way to cope. Don't get me wrong. I have coped in some unhealthy ways in my life, so there is no judgment there. But at some point, we have to make a choice that, we have to realize if our coping is harming us in other ways, then it may be time for us to consider new ways of dealing with our life. And, if we're severely unbalanced, where we're swinging wildly, or if we find that maybe we're having a more difficult time, you know, being present in life, um, we may need to consider seeking a therapist for support. There's nothing wrong with getting professional help. We would go to a doctor if we broke a leg or if we, had a fever that we couldn't get down. Likewise, if our mental health has been really hampered, if we're stuck in traumatic experiences, we do need to consider seeking out someone who has the tools to be able to help us and support us in those ways. And thankfully, um, there are a variety of ways we can get help now. So, and lastly, how do I feel in my spirit? This can look different ways to different people. I know when we start rolling into the realm of spirituality, there are some people who have stronger beliefs than others. But what I'll say is, on a basic level, when we think about spirit, do I feel like I have purpose and meaning in my life? And what are my values? Am I living those values out? And do I feel connected to something bigger than myself? You know, if so, then great. And if not, it may be time for some meditation and some introspection to gain some insight. And for some people, they're connected to a religious tradition. If that's where you find, your meaning and your purpose, then follow that. And if you choose a different path, a more spiritual path where you're into meditation or you have other things, follow that path. But and even if you don't have a religious or a spiritual belief system in that way, am I connected to something bigger? Do I feel like um, it is more than just me out here in the world alone? That is another way we can think about spiritual support. Um, so I thank you all for letting me speak. That's sort of the end of where I am. Like, we've talked a bit about introspection, um, letting go, gratitude and harvest. We've connected that to the fall, to the rhythm of the seasons, and we've thought about how that ties into balance and harmony, as well as what are some practical ways we can approach balance and harmony on a regular level? So, with that being said, that's my reflection. Travis, Camilla, thank you for allowing me the space to speak, and I'm going to turn it back over to our host.
Unless there's anything else really coming up for you, Joey, that you want to share, one of the new things that we are doing is now we're going to have these questions that we're going to make sure we get to every single guest that we have. So you're going to be the first one to go through this with us. And then again, they're not really questions. I would say they're sentence stems, right?
Okay.
Okay, so basically what we're going to do is give you sentence stems, and you can finish the end of it, end of
Okay.
each of these sentences. So let me pull up the first one. So the first sentence stem is healing for African Americans or communities of color looks like.
It looks like love. Like it looks like love. I don't know how far you want me to go. I was like, that's what came to me, but
It's whatever
yeah,
comes to
yeah,
you, like the first thing that comes to your mind. So
yeah.
that's fine.
It looks like love.
All right. Okay. So the second one is community is.
Community is a web. Um, it is a web uh, that we each have different areas to tend to.
Mm.
All right. And for the final one, joy to me is.
The funny thing is when my first thought was, it wasn't like a word. It was more like a sound. But joy to me is uh, fulfillment. I guess fulfillment.
Well, I'll take both of them. We'll take both of those answers.
Mhm.
Because sometimes that it be like that, especially
Yeah,
when you had a day.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
joy
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
and joy is fulfillment. All right.
I like it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. All right, so thank you so much, Joey. We really appreciate you and
Hmm.
everything that you share. I really feel like there's so many, like you said, nuggets for the community to really sit with and take
Hmm.
in on their journeys of healing and well-being. But before you go, we definitely want to give you the chance to just kind of share any other information with our audience in case they want to stay connected with you in any way. So if you have anything, you can share that at this time.
Oh, sure. So yes, you can find me at my website where I'm trying to figure out, like I said, how to balance all of these things at abloveseeds.com. And my IG is abloveseeds. That's the handle. And yeah, you can find me at either of those places, writing something, doing something, trying to figure it out.
All right. I
Right.
love it.
Yes, yes.
All right. Any final words from you?
Yeah, I think this was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Appreciate you, Joey, for taking the time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Hmm.
All right, everyone out there that is joining us and watching. As always, stay connected with us. We'll have more. And each and every day, you already know, we're going to stay grounded, intentional, and connected. What do you say?
Ashe.
Ashe.